Hello, welcome to Make More Noise. I'm DJ Lipper. I'm here with Stella Perret, who you may remember. She's one of the cancelled artists of 2020. And we're going to have a little chat today about art and her background and activism and all that sort of stuff. Hi, Stella.
Hi, DJ, or should I say dinosaur, because saw you yesterday at Reformers Tree.
Oh, yeah.
Great
the ladies. I should say that was me in a dinosaur suit, not just me.
Oh, brilliant. Well, you're really becoming known for that, aren't you? Really becoming known all over the world for those dinosaurs, you know.
Yeah, stroke of genius, David Lammy there with his ill-thought out little jibe, but it's come back to bite him, literally, isn't it?
He gave us a gift, didn't he? He just literally dropped a gift into the women's movement when he said that, you know.
Yeah.
And what a strange man, because he's accusing people of being dinosaurs. He's an evangelical Christian who stood up in Canterbury Cathedral and made a speech saying that the church should stop talking about women and gays. So he's you know.
Yeah,
he's some person to accuse other people of being dinosaurs, you know.
Well, you know, it's very much, he's a politician, isn't he? And I think if they just sort of say whatever they think is going to get him popular at the time, I very much doubt that he believes in trans rights or even understands what a cervix is. So he's got very little ground to stand on when it comes to educating us all about the political situation as it stands at the moment, has he?
Yeah. There were people in the live chat at Reformers Tree yesterday saying, "Oh, what's the dinosaurs about?" And the rest others were trying to tell them what the dinosaurs were there for.
Well, they've got unicorns, we've got dinosaurs, and it's like at least one of them's actually real.
One of them's real, and will outlast them, because dinosaurs lasted millions and millions of years, didn't they? You know, so.
Well, yeah. There's certainly worse things to be compared to, isn't there?
Well, if you can see behind me up on my banner is the now notorious cartoon that got me cancelled, which is an alligator or a crocodile, which is a descendant, obviously were around when the dinosaurs were there. So it leads quite well into talking about that, doesn't it?
Oh, that was a nice segue you did there. That was smooth, that.
Yeah.
How might people know you? They might have heard of you, but they can't put a name, like a face to the name or what have you. How did you enter the turf wars? What's your claim to fame?
Well, if they were to Google transphobic cartoon Morning Star, they will see the worldwide abuse that I received and the Morning Star received on Twitter, led by people like Owen Jones and trans activists. They would just see it will all come up. So it's quite easy to find just by Googling. And you can see a picture of my cartoon up there, the one that got me cancelled. It's called Endgame, because when I did it, February 2020, I thought this is the end game for feminism. If feminism don't win this particular battle, feminism is over, you know. I really did think that. And Megan Murphy has said something very similar. Megan said that she thinks this is the most successful backlash against feminism in modern times, the trans ideology, and she's absolutely right, you know. But I wasn't even aware that Megan Murphy existed when I did my cartoon. You know, I knew very little about what we now calling fourth wave feminism, very little about it.
So,
because,
yeah.
You know,
well,
because I was from back in the day in the second wave feminism, you know, that's when I was growing up. So I had to learn really, really fast about this when I was cancelled.
Did you, so just to go into the picture, so the picture, if you can see it in the background, but I know maybe people can't really see it, they might not have heard about it. I think it's pretty famous in the turf world, but for others who haven't seen it, it's a picture of an alligator coming into a little pond with some newts, saying like, this is our safe space, and then the alligator says, oh, it's okay, I identify as a newt.
He's saying, don't worry your pretty little heads, which is obviously quite sexist, but then these are sexist men we're talking about. So and it was literally this is a very literal drawing of what women were afraid of. A safe space, a women-only swimming pool, for example.
Mhm.
And before all this happened, women were quite used to having women-only swimming sessions at the local sports centres, and especially for pregnant women. You know, I know a lot of councils used to lay them on. Whether that even still happens now
Yeah,
with trans ideology, I don't know.
I used to go to my local one. I went by accident one day and it was a woman only session. And it was in
Yeah,
the I like going in the steam rooms and saunas, and all the women,
yeah,
and a lot of it is like Muslim women and non-white women, I would say, like some Polish women and stuff. And like it was so lovely. It was such like a
yeah.
chatty like session. And I realized how awkward it is to be in a mixed sex steam room, you know, like not that no blokes were like ogling me or being rude, but I didn't notice until I was in the woman only space how nice it was. And then I would go back every Tuesday specifically to go swimming so that I could go to the steam room after and hang out and just be totally relaxed and not have to worry about anything.
And who knows, local councils presumably now have to allow men into those sessions. Presumably it can't be done anymore. So
Well, yeah, I mean it's inclusivity, but it doesn't really include all the women that are supposed to be included, does it? It's the nature of it. I mean, the picture itself. You say that you didn't really understand that much about the debate. How did the idea for the picture come about? Were there anything that you'd heard of that had set your alarm bell?
Well, it was because I was the regular cartoonist at the Morning Star. I was their main political cartoonist for 5 years, from 2015 to early last year. This was the last cartoon I did for them because this caused my cancellation. And it was about the proposed extension of the GRA 2004 to make self-ID really easy, which loads of debate was going on. There were women's meetings. It was being talked about in Parliament. There was loads of controversy about it. So it was in the news. It was in the news the particular week that I drew the cartoon, because every week I would look at what was in the news, send them off another cartoon, different subjects, mostly very left-wing subjects, things to do with trade unionism, Brexit, you know, the troubles in the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, all that kind of thing. I was drawing cartoons about knife crime in London, all kinds of things. So this was the one and only cartoon I had ever done for them on the trans issue, and it was enough to get me cancelled. That one cartoon. So yeah, so it's literally about the invasion of women's safe spaces by a predator who is taking advantage of self-ID. It's just a literal drawing, if you like, of what has come to pass and what we see happening all over the world.
Yeah.
So to me, that's journalistic comment. That's not transphobic in any way. That is a comment on what could happen. And that is what political cartoonists, that is our duty. Even if we're unpaid, if we're in a public role as a political cartoonist, that is what we do. We make predictions. Yeah, we try to illuminate what we see going on in the news. Sometimes it's just having a laugh about it, but other times it's very serious and making a point, you know. So that's what we do. That's our remit. I was their political cartoonist. That's what I did.
Yeah, I mean,
so they actually published it. Yeah, they did actually publish it. And then all hell broke loose. Twitter exploded. All the trans activists within the trade union movement started attacking the newspaper. Within a week, they had been forced to put a public apology for it, for printing it.
Was there any questions when you handed it in? Did the editorial team say, "Oh, hang on, we're not really sure about this"? Were there any concerns when you sent it to them?
Nothing, because I've been sending stuff in. No, because I'd been sending stuff in regularly for 5 years before that. They knew that I was their regular cartoonist. I sent an explanation with this cartoon, which they didn't print, by the way, which said, this subject's very close to my heart because I had these feelings myself as a child and a teenager, and I have no doubt that if I was young today, I'd be being forced down this path of becoming trans. You know, so I gave them an explanation of why I'd done the cartoon anyway, which they chose not to print alongside it, which is a shame because it means that people are able to pile hate from all over the world where they had never even read the paper in their lives before, didn't know anything about the cartoon, didn't know anything about me. So literally, it was 2 days later that it all exploded, and they were forced to kind of retract, and they were forced to say they wouldn't use me again. And it wasn't just about me. The TUC held a special council meeting just about this issue and threatened them with defunding, and told them that they're now on notice that if they print stuff about women's rights, they have to have balance from trans activists in the same issue of the paper.
Yeah, I mean, I remember at the time when this happened, and I think a lot of women had been glad for the Morning Star, because in the sea of all of the misogyny in the left-wing media, I mean, there's, the Daily Mail and the Telegraph and the Times will report on these issues, but at the same time, most of us are from the left, and we would like to see a left-wing critique of all of this that takes on board our ideology and our way of viewing the world. And for a long time, the Morning Star was holding the line. We understood that they were in a difficult position and had a lot of backlash for taking like a pro-woman stance, or allowing that side of the debate to even be aired, because there was balance with trans people being able to sort of say their piece as well, which I'm all for. Editorial balance, as most media organizations should have, the right to reply. That should be in everything. And I remember when this cartoon came out, and a lot of women getting really mad and being like, I'm never buying the Morning Star. A lot of women had got subscriptions off the back of their stance on women's rights, because they felt like it was quite important to support them. And to be honest, I think it's the last left-wing newspaper in the country. The Guardian's so liberal, it just represents the middle classes, and it's got £1,000 carpets in its lifestyle section, and I just think that doesn't really represent working people or Labour or all, really.
Well, let's be clear that the Morning Star isn't a proper newspaper in the sense it's an unregulated newspaper. It's not in IPSO or Impress. It's not actually a newspaper in that sense. It is the mouthpiece of the British Communist Party and the mouthpiece of the trade unionist movement, and that is why the TUC could threaten it with defunding, because that's where all its money comes from. As well as individual readers chipping in a few quid when they can afford it, But basically, yeah. So let's get it quite clear that it's not in the same league as things like the Guardian, which is a proper, actually the Guardian's unregulated as well. I must. That's not under Impress.
I don't know. I feel like the Guardian's it's supposed to represent the left and work, but I think of the left as Labour, and I just think that they're so bougie that they're not really representing working people, and it costs £3 to even buy a Guardian these days. So I'm not. Yeah. I need to line my kitty litter. I might pick one up, but that's about it.
Well, like I said to you, I don't want to go over all this. I don't want to go over the Morning Star issue again, because a lot of your viewers will have seen me on other podcasts talking about it. And but you've just mentioned right to reply. I still, to this day, have not had my right of reply in the Morning Star. They cannot print my open right of reply, but it has been published on Uncommon Ground Media, on WLRN, Peak Trans, and other websites. But they will not publish it in the newspaper. And yeah, so even now,
I mean, it just goes to show the one-sidedness of the debate. And I don't know, I thought I'd start off with that to introduce you, but I also feel like sometimes we focus on the negatives when a woman is cancelled. I kind of don't even want to ask about the cancellation, because I feel like that's making something negative being the whole story. And I know that that's not the whole story with you. What sort of things have you found a lot of work since being cancelled? Have you actually been cancelled, or have you found an entire new tribe through the process of getting cancelled, not really even understanding the debate? It sounds a bit like you walked into it blindfolded, and now you've had a little bit of a crash course on the past 30 years of what's happened from the second wave to the third.
Absolutely. My learning curve had to go like that. It had to go like that, because I was deeply within the left. I consider myself, I consider myself a communist, really. Labour Party far too right wing for me, always were. You know what I mean? I'm So I was very fitted in very well with the Morning Star because, you know, it was all about trade unionism and stuff. And I was a trade union rep. And when I was cancelled, I had to resign early from work. They've tried to force me out of my own union. All this happened as well. So I don't want to go into it. Women are getting used to these stories now about what happens when you get cancelled. A big impact on your life, an impact on people around you, people you know online. They get attacked at the same time because they know you. People drop out of being associated with you professionally. All kinds of things happen, you know.
It feels very much like it's like the cultural revolution almost, you know, that sort of shaming, public shaming and vilification, and then the witch hunting of everybody associated with you has to recant and say, I don't know them. It's
you do have to find out where your friends are, and you find out where all your new friends are as well. I had never been on social media in my life. I had a website which nobody ever looked at, which nobody still ever looks at my website, you know. But the only social media I've ever been on in my life is Spinster. I've never been on Twitter or anything like that. So all these people who are pouring hate against me on Twitter and so on, they were speaking to an empty room because I wasn't there, you know what I mean? Which is quite funny, really. And so since then, I've sort of found a sort of circle of support and friends all over the world, people in America, Canada, other countries that I didn't know before. And I've talked to these people on Zoom. I've met some in real life. Got together with them in London at Reformers Tree, which you go as well. And I met this whole new community of people who are like me, are interested in free speech and free expression. So I've been on lots of different podcasts now. I've been on Women's Human Rights Campaign webinar. I've been on Baroness Nicholson's webinar and lots of podcasts. Megan Murphy, Fair Cop, and you know. So I don't want to continually talk about my own case, but it is what happened to me that got me reinvented as an activist. Because I was pretty active, you know, in left-wing things when I was young, obviously, like we all are. Because when I was a teenager, was the time of the AIDS crisis and the Yorkshire Ripper, and you know, I'm the same age as Julie Bindor, you know, and so this is when we were growing up.
The second wave kind of. Were you a second wave feminist in the day? Because I know that I called
myself. I called myself a feminist back then. I worked in the construction industry for 20 years. I was gender non-conforming all my life. I had lesbian friends. I had all kinds of friends who were non-conforming people when I was in my 20s and 30s, you know. But what happens, Lippy, with a lot of women, we then have to spend years of our lives keeping a roof over our heads, holding down jobs, maybe caring for family, and you suddenly wake up in your 50s and, my God, what's happened to the world?
Yeah.
So this is kind of what happened to me with this, because I looked around and thought, what the hell has happened to feminism, you know?
Yeah.
And
like you back 2 seconds and then suddenly they're saying that men are women because they like wearing frilly knickers.
You've just said that a lot of women were complaining about my cartoon. Where's the sisterhood? Where's the sisterhood? Where's the objectivity? Where's people looking? Actually, that's a cartoon about protecting women's safe spaces.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also, I think, I mean, political cartoons are very savage by their nature. They are supposed to be in your face, provocative, stirring up a conversation or taking a position. I mean, I can't help but wonder if you would have had the same treatment if you were a bloke, if it would have been published in the Times, or somebody that's got balance to be cruel, you know, whereas you're a woman and it's like, how could you possibly be so mean?
Yeah, and that leads very well into, because since then I've been an advocate for other people who've been cancelled, other artists, and I've written several articles in 4W and uncommongroundmedia.com, supporting other cartoonists this has happened to, and it does happen to the men as well. There's a French cartoonist, Xavier Gorset, who was cancelled from the Monde newspaper only in January this year. I wrote an article about him. That was for alleged transphobia. There's Michael Lunig in Australia has just been cancelled from his newspaper for doing a cartoon about the COVID lockdowns. And so it does happen to men, and in just the same way. And those two guys were paid cartoonists for their newspapers, been there for 20 or 30 years. So yes, it happens to the guys as well.
Well, I'm thinking of the infamous cartoon in France, where there's a certain individual, shall we say, that you can't draw their picture, or you might be murdered. It is quite interesting actually to link it up to the other issues and how in such a censorious age, making funny cartoons about people to take the mickey out of them basically is seen as such a hateful thing. And I think it just goes to show the trouble that we are in with freedom of speech and our ability to express controversial opinions. It's becoming intolerant, isn't it?
Because of what happened to me, and I wondered if I would ever get my cartoons out into the public sphere ever again. I published my own book last year, and this is my book. This is my book, which is about the pandemic year. Yeah, it's a cartoon review of 2020, probably based mostly on UK things, but very relevant to the rest of the world. And in that book, I have a section on cancelled cartoonists and a little bit of the history of this sort of cancellation, and obviously talk about Charlie Hebdo and all the rest of it as well. Because even the outlets I've got today, which have encouraged me a lot, uncancelled.co.uk, which is a British website, have been publishing my cartoons. But even they are still very nervous about certain subjects. For example, homophobia and misogyny in the ethnic communities of Britain. That's a no-no for a lot of people. They don't want to talk about that, so when we had the Batley School, and the poor teacher had to go into hiding, and there was a mob outside the gates of the school, simply because he'd shown one of the Charlie Hebdo cartoons in class to his religious studies class. He was teaching a class about blasphemy. So he showed them an example of something that was considered blasphemous in recent history. And look what happened to him and his family. They are still under police protection now. The bloke can probably never work as a teacher ever again. I mean, this is the world we live in. His life is in danger. And I have been trying to stand up in print. I've stood up for some of these issues. And I don't care, because this has happened to me already, and people are welcome to criticise me, because I've already been cancelled. They can see what they like about me.
Can't cancel what's already been cancelled, can you? I think this just goes to show as well, like the growing strength of independent media, alternative media, because I think the mainstream is just churning out such a biased and uneducating information that a lot of people are sort of starting to go, hang on a minute, I don't think this is the full story here. And I think we're searching around for all these different alternative news sites, alternative sources of information, and I think there is a growing need and desire to seek alternatives to the mainstream, because it's just even the left and the right, it's the same corporate messaging, it's the same big tech, big pharma. It seems to be all encompassing now, whether or not you're on the left or the right. These arbitrary distinctions don't really seem to make much sense to a lot of people. Like yourself, you're a communist who's called a far right extremist because you stand up and say people shouldn't be killed for drawing pictures in, I don't know about you, DJ. I find GB News has been a terrific addition to the media, and especially the fact that it's on terrestrial television, so that people in the living room along with BBC, and they're doing very well. And because Posey has been on there, quite a few of our campaigners have been on there. I'm really crossing my fingers that Posey gets her own regular show on GB News. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Let's cross our fingers that is in the pipeline, because that would be fantastic. But they've been great. They've been covering women's rights issues practically every day of the week. Really, really good.
and they've got people like Andrew Doyle on there, and their women presenters are great, you know, very, very, very free speech, you know. So I'm very pleased with that, and I think that shows that at least in Britain, you know, we've got hope of turning the tide with all this, you know.
Yeah, well, it is heartening to see that, but I wish, like I say, I wish there was a left-wing version of GB News, somebody that was brash and didn't really, you know, like not PC, but just coming from something that I could get my teeth into a little bit more, because I do like I do like seeing it, and I'm not ideologically purist, if you will, but at the same time there are certain like legacies and certain ways of looking at it which I just wish it was. There is a critique to be made from all of this, and from the left. There are a lot of people on the left who are sick of this stuff, but we haven't yet got like a media platform to create, like to give us a platform from our own, on our own terms, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I would like to see.
But that's because there's nobody on the left. Most of the left is captured by this rubbish. I'm sorry, but we haven't got any major left-wing figure who's willing to come out. You know, I'm like you. I've pretty much dropped the labels of left and right. I'm always willing to work across the aisle, as they say in America, to fight for women's rights. You know, it's a common goal that we've got, to protect children. You know, and to support the rights that our grandmothers were fighting for, you know, 100 years ago. 100 short years, and already it's being reversed. You know, we haven't had these rights for very long. I mean, you know, it was right up to the 1990s before women could have mortgages in their own name. Do you know what I mean? We are not talking about, none of this happened very long ago, and women had to fight for it every step of the way. And we've now got wonderful people in Parliament. Baroness Nicholson has got a little group around her of about 70 or 80 MPs and peers now who are challenging the government at every stage to keep women's language in legislation, you know, and that is growing all the time, as you know. So yeah, we've got to be positive. We must be positive. Our campaigning is having an effect. And we're breaking through more and more. Look at LGBT Alliance. Whoever thought LGBT Alliance would have a big conference with all their flags at the Queen Elizabeth Conference Centre, and get a message of support from the Prime Minister.
Yeah, it was.
Whoever thought? Did you go to that?
Yeah, I was. It was great. It was great.
Yeah,
and
absolutely awesome.
Events. Women's Place did a conference last 2020, I think, which is brilliant. And just all the various groups that have sprung up, and the fact that they're really focused on almost like single issue campaign groups. You've got Safe School Alliance, who are focusing on safe schools, safeguarding. You've got LGBT Alliance, who are LGBT rights. You've got Women's Place, who are, you know, trying to, well, I don't know how successful they are, but trying to fight from the unions and on the left. You've got like a next stage now where it's targeting specific areas of concern in regards to like transgenderism and how it is creeping into all these different avenues that you don't think about it, including like child safeguarding, I think, is a major one. Child sexualization, which is a kind of separate but intertwined with transgenderism, but something that we are seeing increasing worrying amounts of. Only last week, I think a professor was sacked for saying that she thinks that paedophiles are like a misunderstood and much maligned member of the LGBTQI community. What are your thoughts? On this child sexualization and this issue in society? Like, do you see it as a problem?
Well, that's yes, it's a creeping issue, because if we sexualize younger and younger children, which is what the trans ideology does, it makes this assumption that apparently babies from the age of like 1 day can understand what their sexuality is, which we know is nonsense. You know, children don't even start having regular thoughts in their head till they're about 5. Do you know what I mean? That's why they don't go to nursery school. They don't go to primary school until they're 4 or 5, because they couldn't make sense of what was going on and wouldn't be able to sit still. That is why we have these rules. So yes, we've got to keep our eyes out for child sexualization, because it's all part of the same drive to normalize paedophilia, to make paedophilia acceptable. So we've got a little protest going on in Bristol, which we came across totally by accident. We were watching we were watching your interview last week with the great Nina Paley, who's one of my heroes, animator. Nina Paley, wonderful. And in the chat, we're a bunch of people who seem to come from my area, Bristol. So in the chat, so in the chat, I said, oh, there seems to be some Bristolians here. How about meeting up in real life? So we just put out, why don't we? And 2 or 3 women said, yeah, let's do it. So we then contacted one another on Spinster and offline, just by phone and email. And we got together, and there's about 8 of us. And some are regulars at other protests. Some have been to Speaker's Corner and so on. But there's a couple involved who have never, and we're feeling very isolated. And that's brilliant, because we've managed to draw more women into meeting in real life. So we decided to get together. I think 4 or 5 of us got together to have coffee the very next day, which was Monday 2 weeks ago in Bristol. Yeah. We decided to go for a walk in the park and feed the ducks, and then go for coffee to meet up. And we sat outside this coffee, having in a very, very woke part of Bristol. Sat outside this ethnic cafe having I think they were called masala chai. Very nice they were as well. And we picked up a copy of a free newspaper, which is in all the cafes and libraries and things like that in Bristol. And this is its name. It's called the Bristol Cable.
Okay.
Which is calls itself a left wing. It's an independent newspaper. Comes out 4 times a year. It thinks of itself as at the forefront of investigative journalism. Like the Morning Star, it is not a regulated newspaper, so it's part of an independent network of newspapers. This is, see how big it is, nice big broadsheet, covers lots of very worthy issues like pollution and racism and corruption. Yeah, so if you're in Bristol for the next, all the way up to the end of December, you will see this in cafes and places like that. So yeah, obviously we've all seen this newspaper before. I don't think anything of it. It's got the usual stuff in it. And then we turn to the middle of the newspaper, the centerfold, full colour centerfold of the newspaper, and this is what we saw.
Let's have a look at that. Oh,
and it is an article about child dance troupes, girls, young girls, highly sexualized. Picture there in the middle, and the other pictures showing young girls in very sexualized dance gear. The main picture there is kind of in making them look even younger than they are, with the bubble gum and so on. It's posed in the article says this is empowering to women and girls, by the way. That was the thrust of the article. And it's posed in front of a community centre in part of the Bristol, which has the highest indicators of child deprivation, poverty, potential sexual abuse anywhere in Bristol.
So sexualizing working class girls, and part of it is the deprivation of these girls. That's the subtext.
So regardless of what the article's about, and regardless of whether there was parental consent, and regardless of whether they think this is perfectly normal, we saw this. This was appalling. This is the centerfold of the bloody newspaper. This is free everywhere across Bristol. Any paedophile sat in a library, sat in a laundrette doing his washing, sat in a pub, can pick this up and drool over those pictures. Now, because it was so similar to the Cuties advert on Netflix and the dance troupe, we have called this the Bristol Cable's Cuties moment, this protest. And we have been busy sending off complaint letters to the editor. We've got the local councillors interested in it. They don't like it, and they're investigating it. This newspaper is actually lucky that we haven't gone down the road of reporting it to the police as an example of child exploitation. We haven't actually gone down that road yet, but we could. So we are now waiting for their formal response to our complaints. I went on Sonia Polton's show on Brand YouTube last Monday, and we talked about this. And I've invited people who want to join in with protesting about this to join in with it. And people can email the editor, put complaint in the subject line, and to this email, which you're going to put up on the screen.
Okay.
Cable readers at the bristolcable.org, and just say, you're horrified to see this image of sexualized young girls in a deprived part of Bristol, and don't they see that it's very similar to the the Netflix advert for Cuties, which there was justifiably a backlash against, because we should not be sexualizing young girls and saying this is perfectly normal. Now, Sonia Portman, the journalist, did challenge them. She sent our questions off to them. We sent detailed questions asking whether they had a safeguarding expert, for example, on their board of editors, and they just sent back a couple of paragraphs saying, "Oh, this is perfectly normal for child dance troupes," and basically we're worrying about nothing, So we didn't think that was adequate. So we're continuing with our protests.
Well, if you want to send a letter or a message, please take this email at the bottom here. You can send it wherever you are in the world. If you've got a concern, I think this is absolutely atrocious. Do you know what? My sister actually is a teacher. She was one of those girls. She was in a dance troupe growing up, and I spent many a fun afternoon as a kid sitting in a dance hall while my little sister did her dances on the stage. Me being the tomboy that I was, sitting there like that.
Oh, please understand. We're not against child dance troupes.
No.
What we're against is a centerfold image in a free newspaper, which is distributed everywhere with no safeguarding. That's what we're against.
Well, no, this is the thing I was going to say. Like, when we were there, like, there would always be a strict rule, like you weren't allowed to take pictures. And this has been throughout. She still teaches, and there's this huge rule, like, you're not allowed to take pictures of the girls. You're not allowed to share them on social media, because they realize, like, these are girls they're in little costumes, because that's what you wear when you're a dancer. It's, the audience is filled with parents and mums, so I don't think anybody's there to sexualize the girls. But within that community, there is an understanding that, unfortunately, there are bad actors out there. There are men out there who do get off on this kind of thing. So you have to be very careful when that you're not allowed to take pictures of other people's children and put them out there. And even if you have consent, like, the fact that this is not understood and this has gone out, and like you say, I do think it's worrying, because it is playing up. It is like a deprived taking pictures outside of a deprived neighborhood. That's not an accidental.
No, it's not accidental. It's not accidental. No,
especially when you consider like grooming gangs, and the fact that children in care are targeted, and that often these are the children who are victimized and ignored by the establishment, by the police. And it's because of articles like this that normalize the idea that these are autonomous Lolita type mini adults who have autonomy and are basically just little
DJ, you could have written our protest letter, because everything you've said is exactly what we you could have written our protest letter. So it doesn't, this is a self-explanatory issue. I'm just going to hold it up again so people can see it. This is the newspaper. You'll see this all over Bristol at the moment. Bristol Cable. I don't care how good they are on other issues. It's not about them or closing them down. And this is the article, which is about dance troupes of young girls. Horrible, pornified makeup, making them look even younger than they are. I'm sorry, no excuse for it. Not in a free newspaper, which any paedophile can pick up in a library or a pub. No.
Well,
no excuse for this.
And I think it goes even further. I think even like I said, I was telling my sister is a dancer, and I didn't. And when it was just after Me Too, I think it's often dismissed, Me Too, as this like elitist white feminist type movement. But actually, I found that it really opened up some interesting conversations with my family, with friends and things like that. And one thing my sister said, which is because she is a dancer, that sometimes men assume that because she's a dancer, she's like basically easy target and easy game. And she's telling me occasions when men have groped her and stuff, and she's like, she's teaching their children how to dance. And because she's a dancer and she loves to dance, this is seen as a character trait about her, and she's the opposite of that. And the fact that dancers get into dancing because they absolutely love the art form, yet because of patriarchy they are so heavily sexualized. And these are professional women, you know, who sacrifice a lot to go into it and to be dancers, and they're not allowed to just be dancers. They also have to be Lolita, Whore of Babylon types, and I think the entire thing is just pretty atrocious, really. And I think that
it's funny, everything is seen through the lens of sexualization. When I was growing up, my name, Stella, I was bullied for my name at school because Stella was considered to be a prostitute's name. It was a typical sort of name men would see on the little cards that used to be in phone boxes advertising prostitutes. So I was bullied for my name because my name was considered. You know, see what it means? Everything is seen through that lens of porn and sexualization. And it's worse, 100 times worse now than it was when I was growing up, because of the internet and things like anime and, as you say, cosplay and all that sort of stuff, which most of that wasn't around when I was growing up. It was much more in real life. Or these, I'm going to use the word perverts, had to meet one another in sort of their own private clubs and do everything through the mail. When I was growing up, at least they were kind of more suppressed than they are now. But now it's just everywhere, and it's people are trying to normalize it in everyday life. Well, it's
a thing for I've come around to, like, almost shame and kink shaming. It's we've tried to destigmatize things, because I do think that shame can drive a lot of negative behaviors, and I even have sympathy for the argument with regards to extreme sexual behavior, men who have extreme paraphilias, that maybe some of the shame surrounding the paraphilia is a driver for the behavior. And I think that they've almost chucked the baby out with the bathwater in the urge to destigmatize it to help to minimize the behaviors. Actually, the destigmatization has seemed to actually drive the behavior, and that maybe we just do need to shame certain things and to lock them down. And I don't think that the destigmatization necessarily, like, does what it was intended to do when it started out. I think that there was we can see now that it's not really about destigmatizing it to stop the behaviors. It just seems like we're trying to destigmatize it to legitimize it for the men to be able to do whatever they want with their dicks. Do you know what I mean?
It all comes down to child safeguarding, Nippy. It all comes down to child safeguarding. This is where I think Kelly J is spot on the ball. She has been hammering on about child safeguarding all the time. I don't understand why there are splits in the women's movement. As far as I can see, we're all fighting the same, fighting the same fight. And I do hope that, women come together more about this. I can't understand it. I can't understand why anybody would call themselves a feminist and not be against paedophiles.
I think that's
something I can't understand. Can't understand it.
I think a lot of it's a class issue. I think that what I have noticed when I see awkwardness or defense of not exactly paedophilia, but a poo-pooing of our concern with safeguarding is that I do see it as a class issue, because I think for me a red button issue with me is that I'm from a working class background. My family is, my nieces are from like working backgrounds, and they're, by the grace of God, if they got into some trouble as young, like they're coming up into their teens now, if they get into some trouble falling with the wrong crowd, they could be one of those girls, one of those statistics of the girls who are targeted by men, by groomers, by all of these awful things. They, having no money, being, I know a lot of women who have done various types of sex. I will say sex work, because it's not necessarily prostitution. There's a huge spectrum before then, just because they've had no money, and the trauma that it's caused, even like working on a sex phone line, it does something to your brain. And 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 I really worry. Like, I don't think that they have to ever worry about them or their loved ones being on that path. And for me, I worry. I do a lot of what I do. I'm motivated because I've got my nieces, and I'm scared of the world they're growing up in. And I worry if it's easier to dismiss it when your children are not the targets. Like, there's a very much a class. It's very much a class issue. It is working class girls who are sexualized in a way that I don't think middle class women. They're sort of seen as this feminine ideal, you know, whereas I think that there's another sexualized subclass of women that are allowed to be predated on because of like you say, like centerpieces like this where there's sexualization happening, but it's a class sexualization, and that is my concern.
And it's dressed up as empowering. This is empowering, apparently. And so that was just an example of a little thing that cropped up in my own area that women got together quite by accident and stumbled across, and we've been and we're running a little protest about it. And I think we have to keep our eyes open and be vigilant all the time. Now, I do get what you're saying, that women earning money on OnlyFans might not be quite as bad as, do you know what I mean? But it all goes towards normalizing the sexualization of younger and younger girls, all of it, you know. The ultimate aim is to do away with age of consent and, you know, to allow free access to children. That is the ultimate aim of it. And I'm sorry, it does all seem to be pointing towards that goal.
Yeah.
You can be as liberal about it as you like and say, oh, adult women can do what they like, but it isn't really about adult women, it's about children.
Well, yeah, I also think this makes people uncomfortable because it has shades of the 1980s where homophobes called homosexuals pedophiles, but I also think there's a denial of things like PI, the Pedophile Information Exchange in the 1970s. These were groups trying to piggyback on gay rights. Liberty, supported by Harriet Harman, initially argued for the total removal of age of consent, and I think that still exists, unfortunately, in certain circles, and a real uncomfortableness. And I don't know whether or not it's because they don't want to be seen to be homophobic by slurring the LGBT as pedophilic, or if there's another motivation behind of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I think do bad tactics or bad optics, but at the end of the day, it's the truth and it's evidence. And a lot of the people calling this out are lesbians and gay men, and I think that it's actually homophobic to ignore it because it's just gonna get I for myself in the LGB, like if it all goes tits up, it's my rights that are going to be forfeit, not some straight woman who lives in, I don't know, like a nice house in Highgate or what have you. Do you know what I mean? Like,
the whole trans ideology is totally homophobic. It's all about erasure of lesbians and gays. All about erasure. You know, I've done cartoons about this since my cancellation, simply because people have enjoyed seeing them. You know, I've been putting them up on Spinster and various other places. So you know what you're saying there. You know, the homophobia is never gone away. PIE went underground. It went underground. It's now re-emerged in America as minor attracted persons. You know, we're even we're even sanitizing the word paedophile now.
Yeah.
You know, this has never gone away, and it seems to be elements of the left which have supported it more than anything else.
Yeah. Well, now it's coming through again, and I can see it. I can see it in discourse around, like, and it does come back to this nice sounding idea of like, oh, let's destigmatize it because it's the stigmatization is driving the behavior. But at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about men's sexual entitlements are being, you know, whether or not it's a desire to dress up as a cuddly fox and, you know, do what you will, or whether or not you want to dress up in women's underwear, or whether or not you want to, you know, sexualize children. It's all about what men want, you know.
Yes, but what? But then why do you have to show the rest of the world?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why can't you just do that among you and your friends in the bedroom where it belongs?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there is no reason for people to be putting pictures of themselves out there to the entire world and saying this is normal and everybody else has to agree with it. There is no reason for that at all, Lippy, you know? This is private behaviour which is being paraded on the streets.
Well, yeah,
to make it seem normal to children. No, I'm sorry, no. There's no reason for this. This isn't about destigmatization or liberalization. This is about trying to make it acceptable. You know, we can talk to a blue in the face about what words we use, but that's what it's all about. And I think the reason the politicians around the Anglosphere seem to have been co-opted so easily into this and just turn a blind eye when all their institutions have been captured by it. There has to be stuff in their own backgrounds, perhaps in their own childhood. I'm thinking particularly of male politicians who went to all boys schools. And especially in the UK, which is a very small country, everybody who's in power knows people who knows people who knows people. They're all networked together. They all went to the same schools. They all went to the same clubs. There's probably blackmail going on all over the place. You only have to see what happened in political parties like the Liberal Democrats, where paedophilia was covered up, various MPs, and everybody knew all about it, but it was covered up, you know.
Wasn't it Edward Heath? Theresa May lost documents on a British Prime Minister who was allegedly had a thing for young boys, and there were all sorts of rumours. Sonia Pilson, I think, did a brilliant documentary about this. It's on YouTube about all the links to Parliament, you know, and the High Court judges, you know.
But it goes back in British high society and public life. It goes back to Victorian times and even earlier. Do you know what I mean? I mean, even the Oscar Wilde was thrown under the bus by high society to be the one who was thrown to the wolves so that other people would escape, you know, scrutiny. And those other people went right to the top of the tree, to the highest people in society, you know, because politicians of the day, male politicians, were using the same male prostitutes that Oscar Wilde and his friends went to. So, you know, they had to cover up all those other people. And so look how far back all this goes, you know, in public life in Britain. And you can't tell me that the male politicians who have been challenged in public to say what a woman means or what the word woman means, and are unable to answer because they're enthralled to this ideology. You cannot tell me that they're not doing it because they're so afraid for their position. They're so afraid for their, you know, their job, their position, because of something in their background, because there's something like blackmail going on somewhere. You can't tell me that isn't happening. And you know, there has to be reasons why we haven't had proper democratic scrutiny over all this, and why the only people who care are women. The only politicians who care are women. It's only female politicians who are banding together and trying to do something about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is something that we're seeing across the world, is this lack of, you know, we've got all the evidence on our side, even the current laws as they stand. A lot of the moves that have been made, aren't they?
Can I just say something else about that point? British public schools, and particularly male British public schools, it always used to be the saying, oh yeah, well, I got 6 of the best at public school and it never did me any harm. You know, that was the thing. Well, at the same time, you could say, well, you know, the headmaster used to take me into his room and touch me up, and it never did me any harm, you see. And a lot of male politicians who went to those kind of schools, that is probably how they're thinking at the back of their mind. But it doesn't do any harm.
I think there'd be an interesting book to write about the sort of queer theory and the sort of sexualization of the eroticization of submission and domination. I think when a lot of our leaders went to public schools with a fagging system where you are literally hazed as a young boy by older boys, and that's seen as part of the culture, there's no wonder that an ideology which seeks to normalize and to almost valorize the subjugation of the weaker by the more dominant I think that you could write a whole book about that, and I do think that Queer Theory fits so nicely into it because it does like almost try to demoralize subjugation and domination, you know, and although it's, you know, people pretend that they're on the left and they talk all this talk about social justice, but in the bedroom, if they're getting off on punching their wife in the face or whatever it may be, then I think that it goes to show the real mentality behind a lot of our leaders and a lot of people. And it's like you say, coming now down the way, it's like don't kink shame. A lot of S&M is coming normalized in a lot of people's lives, a lot of people on the left. And I just think if you want to do that, you can be a Nazi and go and do whatever you like to people. But if you say that you're on the left, then I think that you have to embody those beliefs in the way that you treat other people. And I don't think you get a free pass in the bedroom. I think that is probably the most important place where you shouldn't go around exploiting people and being nasty to your lovers, because it's, you know, we should start seeing this for what it is, which is like, you know, nasty, vicious, subjugating, you know, behavior.
Mostly misogyny, but directed against children of either sex, you know. So
I just think it's horrible in gay male culture. Like I think a lot of the S&M imagery, it comes from Nazism, you know, like all the illustrations from the 70s and stuff. That was hugely, and it comes out of Berlin, a lot of it, and nobody's joining the dots that it's
Berlin.
You know,
Berlin was the sexiest place in Europe. Berlin was the sex pop capital of Europe between the wars. And even in the Second World War, when Nazis overran, you know, they kept Paris pretty much as it was and allowed all things like reviews and things to go on in Paris, and they actually allowed their top officers to go to Paris on holiday, and that was where they had their leave so that they could go to multiracial prostitutes and do everything which the Nazi regime was against in their own countries. Do you know what I mean? It's all hypocrisy, isn't it? It's all hypocrisy, you know. Yeah. But I don't know if behind me on this one people can see. They can see my website, radicalcartoons.com, and also my business email. And people are welcome to contact me on that if they want to take part in this protest we've got on in Bristol. Or
are you on
for anything else?
Are you on Spinster? What's your username on Spinster?
My username on Spinster is @ Artist Bristol.
Okay, okie dokie.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to find her, it's Radical. What's the name of the website again?
Radicalcartoons.com. Very easy.
And that's you can find a copy of the book 2020, the year we were all cancelled. It's coming up to Christmas, so it's a great little stocking filler.
You can order it through Amazon, but if you don't like Amazon, just go through any other online bookstore. Waterstones, Blackwell's, they've all got it.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Well,
I'm gonna plug it again. It's the only review of the pandemic year by a radical feminist. It's the only cartoon review you will see that has got pro JKR Rowling things in it, pro Magdalene Burns things in it, pro Posey Parker. You know, against the COVID lockdowns. You won't see another cartoon review like that.
Oh, I think I'm going to get myself a copy. I might put that on. Somebody might be getting a few copies of that this year. Thank you so much for coming on today, Stella. We'll get you on. We're into the view sometime soon. I'm really terrible. I'm not doing the organising at the moment. There's so many women. I need to get on that show.
Oh, that's okay. It's been a real pleasure. And if people watch Sonia Parton on Brand YouTube, I'm going to be on her morning show again on Friday the 10th of December. And we're going to be talking about cancel culture and things. So I'm hoping that I'll be regular with her on her little show there.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'll pop that in the diary. Friday the 10th of December. Please like, subscribe and share. It really helps to get the numbers up. Thank you so much for coming on, Stella. I've been DJ Lippet. This is Make More Noise. Bye-bye.
Bye.